Hello everyone, this is Hamish the Coo, here to introduce Miss Nikki, who will be reading Curious George Takes a Job, also known as Job Monkey, by H.A. and Margret Ray. This was published in 1947. Throw it over to her now. Goodbye. Hello everyone, let's jump right in. Curious George Takes a Job, or Job Monkey. This is George. He lived in the zoo. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. He wanted to find out what was going on outside of the zoo. One day, when the keeper was not paying attention, George got a hold of the key for the cage. When the keeper discovered what had happened, it was too late. George was gone. Can you boys and girls find George? Let's see. He is there. Where was George? They looked for him everywhere. They looked for him in the ice cream stand. They looked for him in the pond. Did the crocodile eat him? Was he with the rhino? Was he hiding in the lemonade stand? But they could not find him. George was hiding in the hay of his friend, the elephant. Finally, the keepers gave up looking for him. George said, "Shh." George found a nice, cozy spot to sleep under the elephant's right ear. And the next morning, before the zoo opened, he got away safely. He said, "Thank you, friend." And off he went. Once in the street, George felt a little scared. What should he do in the big city? Maybe he could find his friend, the man with the yellow hat, who had brought him over from Africa a long time ago. Only George did not know where he lived. There was a bus stopping at the corner. George had never ridden on one. Quickly, he climbed a lamppost, jumped on top of the bus, and off they went. Where do you think the bus is going, my friends? Have a guess. And look, he's in the big city. Now they were right in the center of town. There was so much to see that George did not know where to look first. If only he could go on riding like this forever. Let's see where George is. He's right here. Now let's see what we have in the big city. We have a toy shop, a bookstore, Mabel's department store, the public library, and I think my favorite building is the public library, and my favorite car is the U.S. Mail. What's your favorite car, my friends? Have a pause and find out. But after a while, George got tired and a little dizzy. When the bus slowed down to turn into a side street, George jumped off. There was a restaurant right in front of him. Something smelled good. Suddenly, George felt very hungry. The kitchen door stood open and George walked right in. On the table was a huge pot. Of course, George was curious. He had to find out what was in it. What do you think's in the pot? I see a jar. I see a tin of spaghetti. Could be. Oh dear. When the cook came back, he had a big surprise. Spaghetti was all over the place, and in the middle of it was a little monkey. George had been eating yards and yards and had wound himself all up in it. It was quite the mess. And there's a little kitty stealing some pasta. The cook was a kind man and did not scold too much. But George had to clean up the kitchen and then do all of the dishes. My, what a lot of them there were. The cook was watching George. He said, "You are lucky to have 4 hands. You can do things twice as quickly." Look how fast George is going. You know what, George? I have a friend who could use a handy little fellow like you to wash windows. If you would like to, I will take you over to him. It was George's choice. So they went down into the subway and took an uptown train to the cook's friend. It was an elevator man in a big skyscraper. And there they are putting the money in. Clink, clink. Sure, I can use you, the elevator man said to George. I will give you what you need for the job. You can start right away. But remember, you are here for washing windows. Never mind what the people inside the houses are doing. Don't be nosy or you'll get into trouble. George promised to be good, but little monkeys sometimes forget. Do we think he'll follow the instructions? Let's find out. George was ready to start. My, how many windows there were, but George got ahead very quickly. He jumped from window to window to window, just as he had once jumped from tree to tree in the African jungle. For a while, George stuck to his work and did not pay any attention to the people inside. Of course he was curious, but he had a job to do, and he remembered. So George has a squeegee, a bucket, a cloth, a hat, and something to connect him to the building so he does not fall. In one room, a little boy was crying because he did not want to eat his spinach. No, it's yucky. George did not even look, but went right on with his work. In another room, a man was taking a nap and snoring. George was sorry it was not his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He listened to the funny noise for a bit and then went on working. But what was going on in here? George stopped working and pressed his nose against the window. 2 painters were working inside. George was fascinated. Painting looked like a lot more fun than washing windows. Do we think he'll stick to his work? Let's find out. How convenient. The window was open. The painters were getting ready to go out for lunch. The minute they left, George climbed right inside. What wonderful paints and brushes they had. George could not resist. Oh, how do we think George will paint the room? Let's find out. Oh, wow. An hour later, the painters came back. They opened the door and stood there with their mouths wide open. The whole room had changed into a jungle with palm trees all over it, and a giraffe, and 2 leopards, and a zebra, and a little monkey was busy painting himself. How cheeky of him. Then the painters knew exactly what had happened. Who is your favorite animal? I like the 2 leopards. They look nice and comfy. Luckily, George was close to the door. He ran out as fast as he could. After him ran the 2 painters, then the elevator man, and the woman who actually lived in the place. Oh, my lovely room, cried the woman. Don't let him get away. She was quite angry. George headed for the fire escape. He went whoosh, 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 whoosh. George reached the end of the fire escape. The others had not caught up with him yet. Here was his chance. They could not jump, but George could easily jump down and escape. In a moment, he would be safe. Poor little George. He had forgotten that the pavement was hard as stone, not like the soft grass of the jungle. Oh no, he's crying, and look at his leg. What do we think might have happened? Too bad. The fall broke his leg, and an ambulance came to take George to the hospital. He got what he deserved, said the woman, making my apartment into a jungle. Indeed. I told him he would get into trouble, the elevator man said. He was just too curious. Now, is that fair to George? He was just curious. George had to lie in bed with his leg high up in a plaster cast. He was very, very unhappy. And it all started out so nicely. If only he had not been so curious, he could have had a lot of fun. Now it was just too late, and he was stuck in bed. The next morning, George's friend, the man with the yellow hat, was buying his newspaper. Suddenly, he got very excited. "This is George," he shouted when he saw the picture on the front page. Quickly he read the whole story and then ran to the telephone booth to ring the hospital. "I'm George's friend," he said to the nurse who answered. "Please take good care of him so that he will get better quickly. I want to take him to a movie studio and make a picture about his life in the jungle. Don't let him get into any more mischief until I can get him away." Let's see if that'll happen. What do the newspapers say? This one says, "Monkey hurt and fall. Monkey goes to hospital. Monkey jumps. Monkey paints room. Monkey taken to the hospital with a broken leg." Finally, the day came when George could walk again. He was very happy. "Your friend is going to take you away this morning," said the nurse. "Just wait here for him and don't touch anything." Will George listen? We'll find out. As soon as George was alone, he looked around at all the strange hospital things. "I wonder what is in that big blue bottle." George was just too curious. It smelled quite funny. Suddenly his head began to turn. Then he felt as if he were flying. There were rings and stars danced before his eyes, and then everything went dark, plop, onto the ground. And this is how the man with the yellow hat found George when he came to call for him. They picked him up and they shook him, but they could not wake him up. He was so fast asleep that finally they had to put him under the shower. Yikes, cold. How surprised he was when he woke up. He said, "What's happened?" But look, the man in the yellow hat's so happy he's awake. George said goodbye to the nurse and the kind doctor. Then he and the man with the yellow hat got into the car to drive to the movie studio. Movie studio is this way. Zoom. In the president's office, George had to sign a contract now that he was a movie star. And look, his man is the man is helping him. Look at all the telephones. Let's see how many there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the studio, George kept so busy all the time that he forgot to be curious, but he liked the jungle they made for him, and he played there happily. And action, says the director. And when the picture was finally finished, George invited all of his friends to see it. The doctor, the nurse, the ambulance driver, the man from the newsstand, the woman and the elevator man, the 2 painters, the cook and the reporter, and all the keepers of the zoo. And look, there they are buying all of the tickets. Everyone must be so excited. Now the lights went out and the picture started. "This is George," the man began. "He lived in the jungle. He was a good little monkey and always curious." The end. Say goodbye, George. Now, wasn't that a good story? Say goodbye, George. Goodbye, cook. Goodbye, man. We'll see you a different day. And back to Hamish the Coo. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. And remember, if you'd like to hear more, please subscribe. Bye for now. See you later.